They didn't just renovate their house. They quietly took 2 feet of mine to make it look better. And the worst part wasn't the concrete or the stone. It was how casually they acted like it had always been theirs. That's when I realized this wasn't about landscaping. It was about who was willing to push further. I've lived in that house for almost 9 years now. Nothing fancy, just a small brick place tucked into a quiet cul-de-sac outside of Dayton. The kind of neighborhood where people wave without really knowing each other's names, where lawns are mowed on Saturdays and nobody asks too many questions as long as things stay predictable. My driveway wasn't anything special either, single car width, just enough to get in and out comfortably, 12 feet across according to the site plan I signed when I bought the place. I remember that number clearly because at the time I had a truck that barely fit and I measured it twice before closing. 12 feet, not generous, but mine. For years, nothing changed. Same cracked sidewalk, same maple tree out front, same slightly crooked fence line that had been there longer than anyone cared to remember. It was quiet, stable, boring in the best way. Then the house next door sold. The old owner, Mr. Halvorsen, had lived there forever, quiet guy, kept to himself, always nodded when he saw me, but never stopped to talk. When he moved out, the place sat empty for a couple months, and honestly, I didn't think much of it until the truck showed up. First it was one contractor van, then two, then a full crew. Dumpsters rolled in, lumber stacked up, someone ripped out the front porch within the first week. That's when I knew this wasn't going to be a light remodel. This was one of those full transformations. The new owners showed up a few days later, a couple in their late 30s maybe, sharp-looking, confident, the kind of people who walk around like they've already decided how everything should look. Their names were Eric and Lila. I remember because Lila introduced herself first, big smile, handshake that lasted just a second too long, like she was already trying to sell me on something. "Hey neighbor," she said, "we're gonna make this place really special." I smiled back, said something polite, the usual, "Welcome to the neighborhood, let me know if you need anything." And for a while, that was that. The noise didn't bother me much at first. I work from home, but I've got headphones, and honestly, it was kind of interesting watching the place get rebuilt piece by piece. New siding went up, windows replaced, porch extended. Everything started to look cleaner, sharper, more intentional. But then things started to shift literally. One morning, I walked outside with my coffee, same as always, and something fell off before I even understood what I was looking at. You ever get that feeling where your brain notices something wrong before you consciously process it, like a picture that's slightly crooked on the wall? That's what it felt like. I looked down my driveway, and there it was. A brand new stone border, light gray, clean cut, running along the edge where my driveway met their yard. Except it wasn't where it used to be. It was inside my driveway. At first, I thought maybe I was mistaken. Maybe the old edge wasn't as straight as I remembered. Maybe they just cleaned it up and it looked different, but something in my gut said no. I set my coffee down on the hood of my car, went inside, grabbed a tape measure, came back out, and checked. 10 feet. I measured it again, slower this time, making sure I wasn't pulling the tape at an angle, making sure I wasn't imagining it. 10 feet. I stood there for a second, just staring at that line of stone like it might move back on its own if I gave it enough time, but it didn't. It sat there, neat and confident, like it had always belonged exactly where it was. 2 feet gone. And the thing about 2 feet is, it doesn't sound like much until you're the one who loses it. Suddenly my truck didn't sit right in the driveway anymore. Suddenly backing out felt tighter, like the margin for error had been quietly shaved down. I didn't storm over right away. That's not really how I handle things. I went back inside, sat down for a minute, tried to think it through. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe this was some kind of misunderstanding. But the more I thought about it, the less it made sense. So I walked over and knocked on their door. Eric answered, wearing work gloves, dust on his shirt, looked like he'd been outside working with the crew. He smiled when he saw me, casual, like everything was normal. "Hey man, what's up?" I pointed back toward the driveway. "Hey, that new stone border, it's actually on my property." He glanced over my shoulder, barely even stepping outside to look. "Oh, that? Yeah, the previous owner told us that strip was kind of shared space." Shared. I felt something tighten in my chest when he said that. Not anger exactly, more like disbelief. "It's not shared," I said, keeping my voice even. "The property line runs right along the original edge of the driveway." He shrugged, like this was a minor detail. "Well, Our contractor measured everything out. This layout just works better, makes the front look more balanced. Balanced. I looked at him for a second, trying to figure out if he actually didn't understand or if he just didn't care. It narrows my driveway, I said. I lost 2 feet. He gave a small smile, not rude exactly, but dismissive. You can still fit a car in there, right? Barely. That word sat in my head, but I didn't say it out loud. Instead, I just nodded slowly, like I was processing what he'd said, even though part of me already knew where this was heading. I'm gonna double-check the survey, I told him, just to be sure. Yeah, do what you gotta do, he said, already turning back toward the house like the conversation was over. And that was the moment it stopped feeling like a misunderstanding. That was the moment it started feeling intentional. I went back inside, pulled up my closing documents, dug through emails until I found the original site survey, the one with the clean black lines and exact measurements. And there it was, just like I remembered. 12 feet. Clear as day. I emailed the city planning office anyway, just to get an official copy on record. If this was going to turn into something, I wanted everything documented. While I waited for their response, I kept looking out the window at that stone border, that neat, deliberate line cutting into something I knew was mine. And the more I looked at it, the more it felt like a test. Not of property lines, of boundaries. And I had a feeling. Eric wasn't expecting me to push back. The city got back to me faster than I expected. Just a simple email with a PDF attached. No commentary, no opinion, just the facts laid out in black lines and measurements that didn't care about curb appeal or contractor opinions. I opened it at my kitchen table, zoomed in slowly, tracing the boundary line with my finger like I needed to physically feel it, and there it was again. 12 feet. The property line cut straight down exactly where I remembered it, and that brand new stone border sat a full 24 inches inside it. Clean, precise, undeniable. No gray area. No shared space. Just wrong. I printed it out, walked next door, and knocked again. This time Lila answered. Same polished smile, same energy, but there was something slightly tighter behind it, like she already knew why I was there. Hey, she said, everything okay? I held up the paper. I got the official survey from the city. The border's 2 feet onto my property. She glanced at it, but didn't take it. Oh, Eric's been handling all that with the contractor. Can you grab him? She hesitated for just a second, then stepped aside. Eric came out a minute later, wiping his hands on a rag, already looking mildly annoyed. I handed him the survey. He took it this time, gave it a quick look, then handed it back like it was just another piece of junk mail. Yeah, I mean these things can be outdated, he said. Our guy measured from the fence line. I actually laughed a little when he said that, not because it was funny, but because it was so casually wrong. The fence line was put in like 30 years ago, I said. Fences move. Property lines don't. He shrugged again, that same dismissive motion that was starting to get under my skin. Look, man, we've already poured money into this design. It lines up with the rest of the yard. It looks right. Looks right. There it was again, that word. Not as right. Looks right. I felt something shift in me at that point. Not explosive anger, not yelling, just a quiet kind of clarity. Yeah, I said, folding the survey back up slowly. But it's not. He didn't respond this time. Just stared at me for a second, like he was trying to decide how far he could push this. Then he stepped back. Do what you gotta do. Same words as before, but this time they sounded different. Less casual. More like a challenge. So I did. 3 days later, a licensed surveyor pulled up in a white truck with bright lettering on the side. A guy named Collins. Older, no nonsense. The kind of person who doesn't say much because he doesn't need to. He walked the property, set up his equipment, took measurements from multiple points, cross-checked everything twice, and didn't once ask about opinions. Just data. By the afternoon, bright orange flags started appearing along the boundary line, one after another, cutting a clean, undeniable path straight through that brand new stone border. Right through the middle of it. It was almost cinematic, those flags standing there like markers of truth, interrupting something that had been built on assumption. I stood on my porch watching him place the last one, feeling something settle in my chest. Not victory, just certainty. Eric came outside halfway through the process, arms crossed, watching in silence at first, then finally walked over. This is a bit much, don't you think, he said. I didn't turn to face him right away. I think it's accurate. He let out a breath through his nose, shaking his head. You're escalating this. That word again, escalating. Like I had taken something small and turned it into something bigger. I finally looked at him. No, I said, calm, steady. I'm clarifying it. There was a pause, just a couple seconds, but it stretched. His eyes flicked to the flags, then back to me. You realize ripping that border out is going to ruin the symmetry of the yard. I almost smiled. Symmetry doesn't change property lines. That one landed. I could see it in his face, not anger, not yet, but irritation, like something wasn't going according to plan. He didn't agree to fix it, didn't apologize, just turned and walked back inside. And that's when I realized something important. He wasn't going to move it unless he had to. So I started looking for something that would make him have to. Now, I'm not the kind of person who goes digging for trouble, but I do pay attention, and once I started paying attention to their renovation, really paying attention, things started to stand out. The porch, for one. It looked great. I'll give them that. Clean lines extended out toward the front yard, gave the whole house a more modern feel. But something about it seemed bigger than I remembered from the early construction phase. So I checked. The city keeps building permits public, easy enough to access if you know where to look. I pulled theirs up, scrolled through the approved plans, and there it was. Front porch extension, 6 feet. I sat there for a second, staring at that number. Then got up, grabbed my tape measure again, and walked outside. I started from the original foundation line, stretched the tape out to the edge of the new porch. 8 feet. I measured it again. 8 feet. 2 extra feet. I actually leaned back a little, looking at the structure, trying to reconcile what I was seeing with what had been approved, and suddenly, the whole situation shifted in my head. Because this wasn't just about my driveway anymore. This was a pattern. Take 2 feet here, assume no one pushes back, move on. I walked back inside, pulled up the zoning requirements for our area, front setback minimum, 20 feet from the property line. I did the math. With that extra 2 feet, they were sitting at 19. 1 foot into violation. And unlike a stone border, that wasn't cosmetic. That was enforceable. I didn't act right away. I sat with it for a day, maybe 2, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to be very clear about why I was doing it. And the truth was, I didn't want their porch gone. I didn't care about their symmetry. I just wanted my space back. But if they weren't going to respect that on their own, then yeah, I was willing to use what I had. So I filed a request for a zoning compliance inspection. No drama, no anonymous tip, just a formal request. A week later, a city inspector showed up, clipboard, measuring wheel, neutral expression, the kind of guy who's seen every version of this situation and doesn't get emotionally involved. I watched from my window as he measured the porch, checked his notes, measured again, then nodded slightly to himself. He walked up to Eric and Lila, spoke with them for a few minutes, pointed to the edge of the structure, then to the street, then wrote something down. Even from a distance, I could feel the shift. That subtle moment when a situation stops being a disagreement and becomes official. That evening, just as the sun was starting to drop, there was a knock on my door. I already knew who it was. I opened it, and Eric was standing there, no gloves this time, no dust, just a tight jaw and a look that wasn't friendly anymore. "Did you file a complaint?" he asked. No greeting, no small talk, just straight to it. I leaned against the doorframe slightly. "Are you planning to move the stone border?" His eyes narrowed a bit. "That porch thing is minor." I nodded once. "So is 2 feet of driveway." We stood there for a second, both of us knowing exactly what the other was saying without saying it directly. Then he exhaled, looked away for a moment, like he was recalculating something in his head. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. Maybe it was, but it was also real. And for the first time since this started, the balance had shifted. Not in my favor completely, but enough. A couple days went by after that conversation. Quiet, almost too quiet, like the kind of silence that settles in right before something gives. No more construction noise, no contractors, no trucks, just stillness. I'd catch myself looking out the window more than usual, not even consciously, just checking, waiting to see what they were going to do. Because at that point, it wasn't really about the stone border or the porch anymore. It was about who was going to blink first. The city didn't take long to make things official. They posted the notice on their door, bright, impossible to ignore, and from what I could gather through a quick search online, Eric and Lila had 2 options: apply for a zoning variance, or bring the porch back into compliance. And here's the thing about a variance. It sounds simple on paper, just a form, a review, maybe a hearing, but there's one piece that matters more than anything else. Neighbor approval. Specifically mine. I didn't have to guess when they figured that part out. It was early evening, maybe around 6, the kind of light where everything turns a little golden and calm, and I was out front pretending to mess with the hedge trimmer when I saw Eric walking up the driveway. Slower this time. No confidence in his step. No casual smile. He stopped a few feet away, hands in his pockets, and for a second neither of us said anything. Then he cleared his throat. Hey, so? I think the landscaping crew might have made a mistake. I almost laughed, not out loud, but internally, because it was such a careful way of stepping back without actually admitting anything. Yeah, I said, setting the trimmer down, seems like it. He nodded, eyes flicking toward the stone border, then back to me. We can fix it, he said. Pull the stone, regrade the strip, pour new concrete along the original edge, make it right. Make it right. It was the first time he'd used language like that. No more it looks better. No more shared space. Just fix it. And the porch? I asked. He hesitated again, just a beat, but enough. We're applying for a variance, he said. It's minor. The inspector even said it's not uncommon. I didn't respond right away. I just let the silence sit there for a second, because sometimes silence does more work than words. And you need my signature, I said finally. He nodded. Yeah. There it was. No pretending anymore. No shifting the story. Just the truth. I crossed my arms, not aggressively, just steady. I'll sign it, I said. I could see the relief hit his face almost immediately, like tension draining out of him all at once, but I held up a hand before he could say anything else. After the driveway's restored. That stopped him. Completely, I added. Stone gone, edge fixed, full 12 feet back. Then I'll sign. He looked at me for a second, really looked this time, like he was seeing me differently than he had at the beginning of all this. Not as the easygoing neighbor, not as someone who'd just let things slide, but as someone who meant exactly what he said. Okay, he said finally. That's fair. Fair. Funny how that word shows up late in conversations like this. We didn't shake hands. Didn't need to. The agreement was clear enough. The next morning, the crew was back. Same trucks, same tools, but a very different energy. No loud music this time. No rushed movements. Just quiet, focused work. I watched from my window as they started pulling up the stone border, piece by piece. The same clean line that had looked so permanent just days ago, now coming apart like it had never belonged there in the first place. It's strange how quickly something can go from designed to mistake, depending on who's looking at it. They dug out the base, smoothed the soil, reset the edge exactly along the survey line. Those bright orange flags still standing there like silent supervisors, making sure nothing drifted even an inch. Then came the concrete. Fresh, wet, perfectly aligned. 12 feet. Exactly. I stepped outside at one point while they were finishing up, just stood there for a second, looking down the length of the driveway, and it felt right again. Not bigger, not better, just mine. Eric came over later that afternoon, paperwork in hand. Different posture now, not defeated, but grounded. Everything's fixed, he said. I see that. He handed me the variance form. A few pages, standard language, nothing dramatic, just a request for approval acknowledging the setback encroachment. I took my time reading it. Not because I didn't trust it, but because I wanted him to see that I wasn't rushing anymore. That this mattered. When I finished, I grabbed a pen, signed my name, and handed it back. He nodded, almost like he didn't quite know what to say. Thanks, he said. Yeah, I replied. Just, next time, measure from the right place. That got a small smile out of him. Not big, not fake, just enough to acknowledge the lesson. And that was it. No dramatic ending. No apology speech. Just two people standing on either side of a line that was finally where it was supposed to be. The porch stayed, by the way. The variance got approved a few weeks later. No issues. No hearings. Turns out when the neighbor signs off, things tend to move a lot smoother. And honestly, I didn't mind. It looked good. It always had. That was never really the problem. The problem was how it got there. Now, here's the part one still think about sometimes. Because people like to wrap stories like this up in clean little lessons, right and wrong, good guy wins, bad guy loses, but real life doesn't sit that neatly. Was I justified? I think so. He took something that wasn't his, and I made sure it came back. But did I go looking for leverage with the porch? Yeah, I did. And maybe that's the part that sits in the gray area. Because I could have kept it simple, pushed harder on the driveway, maybe gotten a lawyer involved, dragged it out that way. Instead, I found something else. Something that gave me control. Something that forced the outcome. And if I'm being honest, there was a moment in there where it stopped being just about the driveway and started being about proving a point. About not being the guy who gets quietly pushed aside. About drawing a line and making sure it stays where it belongs. So I don't know. Maybe you would have handled it differently. Maybe you would have let it go. Or maybe you would have pushed even harder. That's the thing about situations like this. Everyone thinks they know what they'd do until it's their 2 feet on the line. So I'm curious, what would you have done? Would you have signed the variance at all? Or let them deal with tearing down part of that porch? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read more of them than you'd think. And if you've ever dealt with a neighbor who thought close enough was good enough, hit like, subscribe, and stick around. Because sometimes the smallest measurements end up drawing the biggest lines.